events occur in real time.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to an FPC Radio Live. That's going to be fairly energetic, I would say, because there's been some rule changes that have kind of, rubbed me the wrong way personally. And if anyone followed my timeline at GLEN31 on Twitter, yesterday I had quite an eventful day going back and forth with several folks that apparently enjoy or think the rule change was necessary. And based on a text conversation that I had with my good pal, my co-host here, he may actually be siding with the folks that I argued with yesterday. So, John, explain yourself, because I am upset if this is the route you're going to be taking.
Well, I'm taking a third route because there's always three sides to every story, right? A, B, and C. My theory has always been, why not just play a 10-minute quarter? And then after that, it's sudden death. You continue on the play. That's something Bill Belichick has proposed. Game ends. Let's start it up again. You get the opening kickoff. You go down and score. There's 3 minutes left in the quarter. I have 3 minutes to do something. If I don't, then I lose. And that's it. If it ends up tied after 10 minutes, now it's sudden death.
Now we're just playing a 5-quarter game and then overtime.
And that would just be in the playoffs.
Yeah, but
with the regular season, whatever they want, you know what they could do in the regular season? Me is just ended in a tie. I couldn't care less. They did that for the first 50 years of the league anyway.
Oh, great. We had a tie last year. I mean, look, I'm going to get obviously anyone who's listened to the show at any point during the last, forever, knows that I absolutely hate the idea of changing what the overtime is, because my point is this, that what is not broken shouldn't be fixed. I mean, it's not broken. People have completely warped how they view this whole situation, and it played out very clearly in my conversations yesterday, where people are arguing. First of all, John, I couldn't care less whether a team that wins a coin toss scores after their first possession. At that point, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sitting here worrying about fairness or anything like that. Like, I mean, this idea, and this is a number that was thrown out quite a bit yesterday, was teams that win the coin toss win 54% of the time. Great. Guess what? That's not winning on the first drive, which is the entire point of, what people have been basically bitching about for the last few years, despite what Greg Bedard says. I mean, it's existed. People have been complaining about this since that Patriots-Chiefs game and that AFC Championship game. But the reality of it is, the real percentage of teams that win the coin toss and also win on the very first drive is between 17 and 19%. Now, anyone can tell, like, if you can sit there and convince me, not just you, but anyone out there, that 17% over the course of, we're talking about 170 plus games. We're not talking about a small sample size. I'm not picking and choosing just playoff games. We're talking about 170 plus games since this rule was implemented about 10 years ago, where only 17% of teams that win the coin toss actually win on their first drive. And I challenge anyone out there to somehow convince me that 17% is a significant advantage, because it isn't. And there's just no possible way to do it. So from that standpoint, that's the root of my issue. Because now it's just like we're going to ultimately get to the same exact spot. We're just doing the same thing with extra steps. That's all it is.
Well, I think part of the issue that people have had is, since the new rule has been implemented, because they have changed it.
That's what I'm talking about. This includes the field goal. So the data that I'm pulling is from the current, the now former rule, but the current rule, right, while in its existence. So I'm not including prior to that, where I do think changing it from only needing a field goal to a touchdown was more appropriate. That to me was an appropriate change. Beyond that, basically, like I said, over the last 10 plus years of data and results says there's no need for a change because it's as fair as you're absolutely going to get. People want this ideal utopia of, everyone gets a fair shot. I mean, why aren't people complaining about number of drives within a game itself? Well, this team got 6 drives and this team only got 5. How is that fair? That's essentially the same thing they're complaining about now. So, sorry, go ahead.
Well, the thing is, isn't 10 of the last 12 playoff games that have gone to overtime been on the very first drive?
No. That's just wins. That's just wins. Only 7 of those games, John, actually ended on the first drive. So when you're talking about such a small sample size, 7 versus 5, I mean, again, play a quick hypothetical. You add 1 game to the loss call, the 5 column, and you're talking about a 50-50 split. And when you take that 12 games out of the big picture, all 170 plus games that have been played under this format, it amounts to less than 7% of the total number of games, which again, you cannot draw any statistician, any mathematician, anyone looking at that will sit there and say you cannot draw a conclusion based on such a small sample size, especially when it kind of not necessarily flies in the face of the bigger picture, because like I said, I mean, only 7 of those games ended on the first drive. I mean, the team who won the coin toss may have ultimately won, but they didn't win on the first drive, which again implies that the other team, quote unquote, had a chance, which is kind of the crux of this entire issue. Correct me if I'm wrong, but people want other teams to get chances. They want Patrick Mahomes to get a chance. They want this guy to get a chance. They get chances. They've had chances. They had chances for 60 minutes in regulation. Like I like. Look, we talked about this before, John. And you mentioned the playing the extra quarter. I understand that people have different opinions on that, and in my opinion, and I've always loved the sudden death nature of overtime because again, it's just it adds this level of excitement and intrigue to a game that again is already exciting, but this is a different element. You take that away completely, and again, I think people are going to realize, wow, this is kind of dull. Like, wow, we're just playing an extra quarter. I mean, that's not really great. I mean, yeah, there's excitement to it, but you lose a whole element to it. So I'm pretty against playing any sort of defined extended quarter. And I think probably the players are probably against that as well. The Players Association, at least. So from a football standpoint, I don't really like that idea. So I want to keep sudden death in it. And I don't know. I hate that this rule was, and Troy Vincent admitted this and said that this was heavily influenced by public opinion. And to me, that's absurd. Like, so to me, it's not necessarily based on the data, which again, I'm not making this up. I'm not, this isn't my opinion. If someone were to ask me, is there a problem? And I didn't know much about the sport, or I didn't sit there and complain or bring up every single Monday, every time a game that went to overtime didn't end on the first drive. I mean, how many times did I do that last year, John? Like a dozen at least. I mean, there was a stretch of about 6 weeks in a row where I was doing it. I would start every Monday saying, hey, guess what, John? Another game went to overtime and it didn't end in the first drive. Like, so to me, if someone asked me, is there an issue? I'd say, okay, let me see the results. What have we have? Okay, well, we have 170 games played under these circumstances. Okay, what are the results of that? How many times did that team that won the coin toss go out and win on the very first drive, thus, quote unquote, not giving the other team a chance to play? And when someone says, oh, only 17% of the time, then I'm like, okay, no issue, move on. And that's it. So I don't know. I feel like that's fairly logical and quite reasonable way to look at this situation. And unfortunately, the NFL didn't do it that way.
I'm not going to die on a hill over this, to be quite honest with you, because it doesn't really, it does impact me because the Packers twice have lost in overtime in the postseason without possessing the ball, but that's their fault. They had chances to win in the first 60 minutes.
I will give credit to some of the, there are a lot of Packers fans. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but you keep bringing things up for me to talk about. But there are a lot of Packers fans that I interact with on Twitter, and I will give them credit. For the most part, they do not blame the coin toss. Like, it sucks that they didn't get that opportunity, but they also realized that they didn't do themselves any favors leading up to that point to deserve that opportunity. So credit
Yeah,
where credit's due. At least they, for the most part, the folks that I interact with, I'm sure there's ones out there that again disagree, but I'm speaking with mostly the folks that I tweet with or
I did
whatever.
the NFC Championship game. I didn't have a problem because they had a 19-7 lead with 3 minutes left. They couldn't recover an onside kick. I mean, they just kind of fell asleep for the last 3 minutes of that game. They should have wrapped it up much easier. They should have scored touchdowns and scored instead of kick field goals in the first half when they had a 16-0 lead. So they lost that game well before
Mm-hmm.
it got to overtime. And then the next year they lost in Arizona when Rodgers threw 2 Hail Marys to get it into the end zone. And at that point, I'm screaming at the TV, go for 2 here, because Arizona's back on its heels. They're not sure what the hell hit them. Go for 2 and go for the win at that point, because your defense always struggles in these situations. So just go for it at that situation. They kicked the extra point, and then Arizona won the toss, went down the field. They had their opportunities without question. So I can get that. I think it's gained more steam when Kansas City lost to the Patriots a few years ago in the AFC Championship game, and even more so now with Buffalo losing to Kansas City in the divisional round, getting the ball. That I think is really the impetus behind this.
Which is absurd, because again, this kind of epitomizes the entire silly debate. Is that in the very next, first of all, the argument is like, how are defenses expected to stop the unstoppable offenses? Well, I'm sure they unstoppable offensed all the way to the Super Bowl, correct? Oh wait, no, neither of those teams played in the Super Bowl. And not only that, but that team, Kansas City, that, of course they're going to score when they get the ball first in overtime, lost the very next week by getting the ball first in overtime. So again, it's pick and choose which battle you're going to fight. I mean, everyone complained, oh, well, the Chiefs lost because of a coin toss. No, and to your Packers point, no, the Chiefs lost that AFC Championship game because they got shut out in the first half and had to expel absolutely every ounce of energy it took to just tie that game. And then John, and then they had 3 opportunities on 3rd and long to give themselves a quote unquote chance. And that's kind of the thing too, not just specifically that game, but just the rule in general. On defense, you literally have to do the absolute bare minimum when you get to overtime. And that is, don't let your opponent in the end zone.
Right.
You could, in theory, allow 98 yards on the ground and the team to kick a field goal, and you would still have an opportunity. So, and on the flip side, as an offense, in order to win on the very first drive, you have to do the absolute most. You can't settle for a field goal. You can't just drive and punt it away because you're given a opportunity to the other team to steal the game. No, you have to score a touchdown. So to me, I'm looking at it like, how in the world are we looking at this as an unfair situation? Now, again, if the stats came back and said, look, 60% of the time, winning the toss works every time, John, okay, then I'd be like, okay, clearly there's an advantage geared towards someone who wins the toss. But there isn't. And again, we have
happened in the playoffs, though. 7 out of 12 is 60%.
No, but again, we're talking about now. But see, we're dealing with such a small sample size, though. And when you take that just out of context, I mean, we're talking about 12 games over the course of 10 years. So if we're picking and choosing just those games and ignoring the mass number, that's a manipulation of numbers. So to me, I'm not seeing that as any sort of legitimate argument, especially when, like I said, I mean, the sample size is so small. You literally add one number, make 5, take one win and put it in the loss column, and it's 50-50. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, to me, that's not and I'm not saying it's your argument. I'm just saying the folks that are using this as a huge argument, it's not a great argument, because it's stat picking. You're literally just picking the grouping of stats. And look, 3 of those wins, John, have been at the hand of Tom Brady. So I think he has a very heavy influence on the outcome. You know what I'm saying? So to me, 7 versus 5, that's not a big statistical advantage one way or the other. To me, it's moot. I don't even look at that as anything. And people focusing on just playoffs, again, are ignoring the big picture, which is the system is fine. and it's worked fine for 10 years.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we also saw it this year because we had back-to-back weeks of this, with overtime. So it was just right in our face. I mean, you can go a couple of years without this happening, where this teams finish the job in regulation and you don't even think about that. So, it's going to be interesting to see what transpires. I'm glad they left the regular season alone. Like I said, I don't even have a problem with ties. I think the problem with ties in terms of the NFL, it has to do with gambling, because people bet money lines and a tie is a tie. Everybody gets their money back, and gambling sites like to work off the vigorous. So that's probably why they don't have ties in the season, although we did see one this year because you can only play so much. But look, you look at some of the records of the teams in the 60s, it was like 8-4-2. That was like a common record for someone.
Well, and look, I mean, that's the thing too. It's, we eventually this is going to make it to the regular season, John, and that's the thing. It's exactly what happened last time. Is I think it was 2 years in the playoffs, and eventually they adopted it in the regular season. So eventually we're going to get there, and we already have teams pushing the limit of that 10-minute overtime. So guess what? We're going to end up seeing more ties. Because if every team gets an opportunity, and then again, coming back to the root of the issue is, at the end of the day, people are going to be upset because they're going to realize, well, what happens if one team scores, the other team scores? Well, guess what? The team who won the quote unquote coin toss is going to have an extra possession, and we're right back where we started, but again, with extra steps. So this rule change does nothing but self-serving of the loudest fans out there that were complaining that, again, in a lot of ways, were hypocritical because 3 or 4 years ago they're complaining against it. Now they're complaining for it, and it's it just doesn't make sense because, like you said, I mean, we saw it play out in front of our eyes. Both situations, one situation where a team actually did win, and the other where they didn't, and it happened to be the same team on both ends of it. So it's to me, I've been talking about this for a while. I've been dreading the day that this changes because, to me, I see this as just, it's inevitable that eventually it's going to change again. And I can't see any scenario in which it changes that it doesn't become more of a gimmick like college football. And that worries me because I that is something I seriously don't want to see. I hate this rule change. I have it right up there with the shootout in the NHL, and anyone who's listened to me knows that I don't like the shootout that much. And NFL overtime is getting to that point for me.
Basketball has the best overtime, 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, but again, they're sport, and I've seen, and this was the other argument that people were giving me. They were giving me the basketball and baseball argument. I said, look, there's two different, those are three different sports entirely, and you can't compare them. Because in both, well, first of all, basketball, obviously, the amount of scoring is just, it's unmatched in any sport. I mean, it just is. The frequency that points are given and awarded, isn't matched by anyone, and unless
100 possessions per game, so you can't make it a sudden death situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Odd game, and the team has a ball with 3 seconds left. Baseball literally has frames, so you have to finish them. Bowling, you have frames.
And in football's case, unlike baseball, and people were dying on the hill about making it similar to baseball, and I'm like, that just doesn't make sense because in baseball, like, you can't win a game by making a diving catch in the top of an inning. Or you also cannot say make a diving catch and then somehow immediately get your offense at bat with a runner in scoring position. Like, a diving catch does not result in that. In football, you can do that by scoring a defensive touchdown, which would win you a game, or B, just turning the ball over and giving you turn the ball over in the opponent's territory, you have to gain 15, 20 yards for a chip shot field goal, and you win the game. Like, you can't make those swings in baseball on defense. You can't make that, obviously in basketball, it's just a completely different scenario that just isn't comparable. So in football, you have a chance on defense to make plays. Make them.
Yep.
The Bengals did. More teams make plays than not. 83% of teams have 83% of the time, both teams have an opportunity on offense in overtime. So to me, I don't see a problem. I think it's silly that we're even going the route of changing it, and the idea that the NFL basically said, yeah, no, this is we listen to the crowd. Well, guess what? The masses aren't that smart. Sorry.
No, that's
what
true.
it is.
Except they do tend to listen to their customers, and they'll change things on the flies. Unlike baseball, which takes forever to make changes, and then when they
but that's not necessarily. There's got to be a balance with that. You can't just, and we know, and we've been saying it for years, John. The NFL is a put your finger up in the wind and see which way it's blowing. I mean, that's how they run their business, and that's not great because again, it makes them kind of bounce all over the place. I mean, they scream integrity, but do things that just defy that mantra constantly. They have one investigation that goes one way and then another that goes another. They do one thing one time and then another, and then you have Troy Vincent up there talking about how, we tend to listen to the crowd. So you're being influenced by fans, which I know, they say, oh, the fans make the game. Yeah, sure they do. But guess what? They don't necessarily know exactly what's best for the game. And again, it's simple data research to look into and see if this is an issue. Is it an issue? No. Okay, let's not change it. There's other issues to worry about in football than that. And I think this is just a way for them to hide those other issues. I don't know, like minority coaching in the NFL, or maybe the fact that the NFL is being sued. So you know what? You know what we're going to do? We're going to change overtime because that's going to galvanize a huge group of people. It might alienate a few, but the benefits outweigh the negatives. And guess what? No one's talking about Brian Flores. No one's talking about anything else. They're talking about overtime.
No, Deshaun Watson. I mean, that's
I mean, did you see? Yeah. I mean, look. Did you? I didn't watch the whole thing because I couldn't get through it. But did you see part of that deposition that surfaced?
Oh my God!
Like I mean that was absolutely embarrassing. Like I am very much rooting for the Browns to get some egg on their face and all this whole situation. This is in my opinion, a disaster just waiting to explode, and it's only a matter of time. So so to me, this is nothing more than a hey guys, look over here. This is what we're doing. We're going to change a rule that really, first of all, the rule changes nothing. Really, because like I said, ultimately we're going to end up getting back to the same exact situation we've been in, and that is, well, ultimately a team who starts with the football in overtime is going to have an extra possession if it plays out that way. So, John, I can't.
Oh, I took 2 Tylenol before the show, so I'm doing okay. So I knew you were going to be venting today. And again, like I said, it's of all the things in the NFL, it's not the biggest concern for me, and I can see both sides, and that's not really good for talk radio to say I can see both sides, and I'm somewhere down the middle. I favor some sort of change, and I do like the Belichick model of 10 extra minutes, but I would only save that for the postseason anyway. The regular season, do whatever you want because.
Well, I see, but that's a thing too that in any sport I hate. I hate different rules. Like what? Like how can you?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Like you know what I mean. Like you play. So they're only going to do this overtime in the playoffs, but you play the entire regular season to get to the playoffs under a different set of rules, and then it changes. So to me, I hate that. Like again, that's part of the reason why I hate the shootout, because obviously they would. Here's the thing: they would clearly never do that in the postseason because they realize how silly it is. So why even do it in the regular season?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So I don't like having different rules for the postseason and regular season in any sport. Not just the NFL. So that would be my pushback.
It's not like they have a 3-point shot from 23 feet 9 inches in the NBA in the regular season, and they move it back a foot for the postseason.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Like I said, I think this is just maybe my prediction of this just becoming a worse situation down the road in terms of changing the rules even further, because this is just a slippery slope. The people are going to complain when one team again loses on the third possession because they got the ball second and they didn't get a second chance. And it's like, to me, the way I see it, and maybe this is a bit of a old school style look, you play 60 minutes. Beyond that, You shouldn't be guaranteed anything. There's no chances. There's no this. Like, everyone's like, well, Josh Allen didn't get a chance. 13 seconds. 13 seconds. You allowed a team to almost unpressured walk down the football field and score.
It
You
was
don't.
44 yards on 2 plays in
Yeah,
13 seconds.
and
That's
we
amazing.
and they
Yeah,
they completely like John, the number one defense in the NFL allowed
Right.
that to happen. You do not deserve anything. Make a play. And like I said, even then, they just had to do the bare minimum. Make sure they did not cross the end zone with the football. That's all you
Yep.
had to do. All you had to do. And you get your chance. The unstoppable Bills offense gets their chance. Like, look, I picked the Bills to win the game. I was, if I had to pick a team to root for, I was rooting for the Bills. But in no way do I think they should have gotten an opportunity after overtime. Like, sorry. Play defense.
They had opportunities. I mean, that's still. I don't think I could walk 44 yards in 13 seconds.
Yeah.
They were able to take 2 passes, call a timeout, then come out, call another timeout, get the field goal set. They were smart to have their timeouts left and able to execute, and they executed it so splendidly and easily that it looked like something on 7-on-7 camp back in August. So that's on Buffalo. Like you said, the best defense in the league couldn't get them off the field in 13 seconds. All goes back to the kickoff too. Why not squib it or kick it to the 5-yard line so they're forced to return it? I mean, it's just so many different things. It was like the perfect storm for Kansas City, the imperfect storm for Buffalo in that situation. Buffalo screwed that up. I mean, they had every chance to wrap that game up and move on. I think they would have won the Super Bowl. I think they beat Cincinnati in the AFC Championship game, and I think they beat the Rams in the Super Bowl. And that's the star-crossed organization that has gone to 4 Super Bowls and lost, and I'm picking them to win it this year, which is probably a bad sign since I picked Cleveland last year.
I was gonna say, sorry, Bills fans.
I know. Yeah.
You just
the
got
guy you want picking you.
Just like the kiss of death right there. I know.
Yeah.
I know. You got some. You're a paisan and everything. Maybe there's some mafia kiss of death right there for the Bills Mafia.
Remember him?
Yeah.
Remember
there you go.
Yeah. He's going, oh, come on, Kryptonite, and everybody just starts ripping up the tickets. It's like, okay, that's a
man.
loser.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Like I said, I don't know. I think the change was pointless. I think it's silly. And look, I mean, I think it's going to take some I don't know, element away from it. I mean, it is what it is. There's something about sudden death that's great. And like, we go back to all these like playoff games. Like John, you know what one of those games included in that 10-2 was? The Tebow game. The Tebow game. I think that that might actually be game number 1 in that 10 in those 12 games. Yeah.
2020, 2011 they started.
Yeah, yeah. So that and look, I mean, Pittsburgh, you let Demaryius Thomas run a slant across the field and then run 75 yards. Like,
right.
Like, sorry, you lose the game. And here's the thing, and this is another argument that, and I'm trying to get these all out there for people. I one of the things I feel like is this greatly devalues defense. And people were saying, oh, no, it doesn't. What are you talking about? Now they have to play. No, think of it this way. It used to be that under no circumstance, as a defense, you could allow a touchdown. Now it's okay if you allow a touchdown. It's fine. So how does that not devalue defense?
Yeah, no, it's true. Good point.
So I don't know. To me, it's just it's a pointless change that I think is going to have a little bit more negative impact that ultimately brings us right back to you're basically going in a circle. I mean, the change that you make basically ensures that you make no progress. Like, I don't know if there is progress to be made in overtime. Is it a perfect system? I don't think there is a perfect system because it's football. Like I said, I mean, we don't go into a regular season game and afterwards say, well, you know what? The Chiefs got 9 possessions and the Bengals only got 7. So that's not fair. Well, no, that's football. It's called making plays. It's called, you know what I mean? Like there's elements to the game that play out before our eyes, and trying to take that away is going to ultimately ruin football if they don't stop this. Like I said, I feel like this is a slippery slope. Like they're gonna change it again. It's gonna ultimately get changed again to the point where we're gonna have teams set up on the 25-yard line and games are gonna end 54-49 because you have 30 points apiece in overtimes, quote unquote. And to me, that you throw it out the window.
I wonder if Vegas would, or the sports betting community would push back on that, because that would lead you to so many more overs at that point, where you have these endless games, or sometimes you'd listen to a college game and 76-70. Like, how the hell did that happen? I had watched the first half.
That's bad football. Like, look, I like offensive. Yeah. I like offensive football. I'm not a football dinosaur. Like, I think there's value to both. Both sides. I mean, all three phases of the game. Obviously, special teams too. But like, I love offensive football. But everyone was so excited about that Rams and Chiefs game from a few years ago, and I just thought it was boring. It's like if I used to play Madden on like all rookie, I mean, it was so easy to score and just succeed. It was boring. There was no fun to it. It's the same thing. Yep. Like, you can have a high scoring game that's exciting. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying that just because it was a high scoring game doesn't mean it was a great game. Like, it was a poorly defended game where it was just kind of what you said earlier. It was kind of like 7-on-7. That's what it feels like. It's like, okay, this isn't great. I mean, 7-on-7's fun when you're out playing flag football, but I don't want to watch this as football. That's not football to me.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think obviously the most exciting Super Bowls, you look at them, most of them had the Patriots playing in them because they always played in exciting Super Bowls. The Seattle Super Bowl, 28-24. When both teams are in the 20s, there's value to offense, there's value to defense. I mean, in that Super Bowl, Brady was incredible in the fourth quarter, but yet it was a defensive play that sealed the deal for the Patriots. So you get a little bit of everything. Those, to me, make the best games. When it's like 48-45, you forget the first touchdown, which happened 3.5 hours ago, which may have been a big play, but now it's been deemed unimportant because there've been so many since.
Yeah, and generally it's nothing. There's no exhilarating play about it. It's usually just poor defense or like a broken coverage where it's like, oh great, we huck it down the field and it's back and forth, and it's like people only look at exciting football as football that has scoring on every drive, and the reality of it is, NFL teams only score at about a 28% clip. You know what I mean? That's the success rate of offensive drives throughout the league. Like, yeah, you're going to have games where offenses are a little bit more active than most, but that's not the norm. And unfortunately, people see that as a norm. So when they look at this overtime rule, they're like, how can we live with ourselves if we don't give defenses a chance when it's like these offenses are unstoppable? Well, neither of those offenses were the best offenses in the league. Like, they're stoppable. Like this idea that I saw people tweet like Patrick Mahomes changed the overtime rules, and I just wanted to slam my head through my desk. And my desk is very thick, it's like rich mahogany. Okay, maybe not that because I can't afford that, but pretty solid wood. Like, I would have probably not been doing this show, but I'm sitting there like driving. I'm like, no. Please, for the love of God, do not add that element to this conversation, because then I would really just lose it. I'd end up at some, what is it, a Shady Side Asylum or whatever it is. Shady, the standard like mental institution name that Shady Acres. There we go. Right.
Screaming about the overtime rule. Yeah. I mean, actually, the last time Patrick Mahomes was in an overtime game, he threw an interception.
That's what exactly. So he had a chance.
Yeah, he had the ball. He threw an interception. Give Cincinnati credit for that.
I felt like Warden Norton there. He had a chance, What say you, fussy britches? No, it's I don't know. Like I said, I'm not gonna. This is never gonna. You're never gonna be able to convince me, not you, but just anyone, that this rule was a necessary change or it does any good. Because to me, it doesn't. It takes away an exciting element of the game, and it's the pressure of like, look. If you're a team that loses the coin, all of a sudden there's a lot of pressure on you to make a stop, and that there's an exciting element to that. It's overtime. It's not regular season. Like, all of a sudden you have to make a play, and it's like, that's the card you're dealt. I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, not every team, like, some teams have better players than others. You don't sit there and hear, oh, well, it's not fair because he has a better they have a better quarterback, so we should get this opportunity. No, life isn't fair. Football isn't fair, and it's not meant to be. It's about gaining advantages. It's about taking advantage of those opportunities, and that's what's presented.
We're not golfing with handicaps
Yeah,
here.
exactly. Exactly.
If you're better, you're better. You find a way to win the game in overtime. But more importantly, try to find a way to win in regulation so that you have to get to the thing.
Exactly. So like you're not gonna you can't.
You may have convinced me a little bit this morning, Ian. Congratulations. I'm there's certain things I'm not moving on, but there's certain things that I'm kind of flimsy on, and I might be leading in your direction at this point.
That is gold, because I am going to pull that audio clip, and I'm going to play it over and over and over
not
again.
About the quarterback. No.
No. Hey, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You already said it. I can use it however I want. I have the ability to do so. No,
LeBron v. Jordan. I could be pulled in a different direction.
Well, look, I appreciate it. I think we both, may disagree on certain things, but we certainly respect each other's opinions, which, may not come across sometimes as what happens, but really we do. Look, I don't, I'm just looking at the data. That's all. That's it. And like I said, I worry. Like I said, at the end of the day, it's going to end up being some sort of sorry, I'm not answering this phone call here. It's going to be some sort of issue down the road, and we'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, I guess if you're rooting for Tom Brady in overtime, I think you're doing pretty well. So because he's pretty good in overtime. Yeah. You give him an opportunity. That's the thing. You give him an opportunity to end the game. I don't care what defense you have on the other side of the field. I don't care what the game's going on. He's going to end the game. And that's the bigger unfair advantage, John, right there. Who's your quarterback? Well, guess what? You have Tom Brady. You get the ball. You're in pretty good shape, because I can't imagine that he's going to, at the very least, turn the ball over in an overtime period. That, to me, I look at as just an impossible thing.
I think in 2009 they lost at Denver in overtime against Josh McDaniels. And then in 2015, they lost at the Jets, but that's when Belichick deferred and kicked off.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, you're right. I'd have to.
Was there a Kansas City overtime loss in 2002? I can't remember but I doubt there was. I mean, I think he's lost twice in overtime. I think he's something like 13-2 in overtime.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, like, that's the thing. It's like you give him, and it doesn't even have to happen on the first drive. It's like you just give him an opportunity. He's going to end it, and that's kind of, and again, that's kind of the thing with how overtime works now. It's like, all right, as an offense, yeah, you get the opportunity, but it's no sure thing. And we see, and people act like it's a sure thing, and it's like we see it play out every week that it's just not. So, I think eventually people are going to realize that we've made absolutely zero progress in the ultimate issue that people have, and that is fair opportunities. Because, like I said, we're ultimately going to end up right back where we started. Just now, a team can, and here's the thing: now a team that gets to go second has an advantage in a way, because, well, if they know a team either A, kicks a field goal, or B, scores a touchdown, well, they can choose to kick a 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
And okay, well, the team before that, it doesn't make sense for them to go for the 2. You know what I'm saying? So there are now excuse me, advantages in the other direction. So we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, we are months and months away from any of this ever actually happening, because, again, it doesn't happen until at least next January. So excuse me. Well, plenty of time to complain, in theory, about some of the possibilities that will arise from this. But we are going to say goodbye for today. We will be back possibly tomorrow. We're kind of working on our schedule for the next couple of days. But if you don't, or if you're just tuning in now, you can definitely check this out on wherever you get your podcast, or on fullpresscoverage.com. You can listen right on the website, because we'll have it there. And, of course, if you want to watch us, or watch me and watch a still photo of John, then you can head to our YouTube channel and watch it there. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I hope I changed more than just John's mind about NFL overtime today. If I have, then, give me credit. Thank you very much. We'll